In this new world filled with mystery and challenges, can Naomi find her true belonging? As her protector, how will Killian's relationship with her evolve? Join us on this journey to discover Naomi's destiny and her fateful connection with Killian. Ready to delve into the secrets of Naomi and Killian? Don't miss an update, subscribe now. Chapter 1. Naomi pulled the scratchy blanket high over her neck, flipping onto her side. She wished sleep would find her, but she was caught up in the girl conversing loudly on the bed next to hers. There might be some alphas coming, one girl giggled. Doubtful. Most don't go to group homes, only the really desperate ones. If they can choose anybody, why would it be us? The other girls scoffed. Footsteps from the hallway caused everyone to shuffle and pretend to be asleep, and Naomi finally closed her eyes. She was exhausted. She was the smallest girl at the home, and all of the other girls picked on her because of it. They didn't mean anything by it, it was mostly empty threats that led to her doing their chores for them. Naomi was 19 and getting ready to age out. 18 was usually the cutoff, but the director knew how helpful she was and extended her stay. Her birthday was in a few weeks and she didn't know where she was going to go. She had no family, no place in a world among wolves. She didn't have anybody or anything. She didn't have a single dollar to her name. The following morning, Naomi was up with the sun. She had to do some laundry before she cleaned the bathrooms and then help the cook serve breakfast. Her temple pounded with a headache and she moved sluggishly. "You're still in here?" Kate, the director, asked. "Naomi, darling, you should have been finished with this already. You need to hurry up. You still need to do the other bathroom and help the cook. I'd also like for you to wash the bedsheets today. Some of the girls have been sick." She nodded. "You know I don't accept nods as an answer. Do you understand what I am telling you?" "Yes, Kate," Naomi answered, tossing the rag in the bucket and continuing to the next bathroom. The cook, Darla, was stacking the last of the pancakes when she finally made it to the kitchen. "Poor thing. Kate runs you ragged. Are you sick?" Darla attempted to press her warm, wrinkly hand to the back of her forehead, but Naomi moved back before she could touch her. "I'm okay." "That's a lie. You have a few minutes before the others get up. You need to eat." She slid a plate to the only stool beside the massive island. Naomi picked at the pancake, propping her face on her fist. Her eyes fluttered. She had only been awake a few hours, yet her feet ached, and she still had a full day's worth of work ahead of her. "You're 25, Alpha," the man Joe said. "The pack needs a Luna. Your parents would have expected you to have one by now." "Don't talk to me about my parents," Killian snarled at his father's beta. "I will not rush my fate." Joe sighed, not fazed by his irritation. "We both know it has nothing to do with fate. If none of the packs have what you are looking for, maybe it's time to start looking at the humans." There was some truth to his words. He couldn't seem to find what he was looking for, and maybe it was time to expand his horizons. "Leave me," he demanded, settling at his desk. Most alphas chose their mate around 23. After the tragic death of his parents, it was only recently he felt ready to start looking. "Hey." Killian looked up to find Mickey at his door. He was his beta, soon to be inducted in just a few weeks. He was his best friend, and totally opposite of him with honey blonde hair and a gleaming smile to match. "Pups want to play capture the flag. Can you spare a few?" Killian glanced at his pile of work, and back up at his friend. "Sure, but you're helping me with this afterwards." "I don't think you're taking your role seriously," Joe said. He was sitting in Killian's chair, waiting for him to return. Killian wiped the sweat off his brow with the end of his t-shirt, feeling anger stir in his stomach. "You leave your work for games." Joe stood, walking to him. Killian swallowed, feeling his shoulders tense. "My father always played capture the flag." Joe opened his mouth, but he stopped him. "Before you forget, Joe, I am the alpha of this pack, not you. The pack has been flourishing even with the tragedies we have faced. I would think twice before you question my authority." Joe frowned but nodded. "You don't have permission to sit in that chair again." Killian stepped closer, his height towering and intimidating. "Do you understand?" Joe pursed his lips. "Yes, Alpha. My apologies. I am trying to respect you for my parents' sake. I know you are wanting what is best for the pack, but trust that I know what is best for them." Joe glanced up, a gleam in his eyes as his hard features seemed to cool. "They would be proud of the alpha that you have become." Chapter 2. Naomi was sick. Her whole body ached and she couldn't breathe through her nose. Kate wasn't forgiving to a little cold though. She still had to get her chores done. She sneezed, her body jerking with the motion. Gross, one girl whined. I'm telling Kate. Naomi continued making the beds, before retrieving the vacuum. If you think it's funny to pretend to be sick, Naomi, you're off kitchen duty for the rest of the week, Kate said behind her. Get your stuff. You can sleep in the basement until then. She cringed. Being off kitchen duty meant no food. The basement was cold and drafty, but at least she could finally rest. Kate stepped closer, her hand reaching for her, but she moved back out of her reach. The director sniffed, looking very displeased. You know I only do these things because I care about you. You won't get this kind of treatment in the real world. Finish the beds and go to the basement. You're not allowed up here until Sunday. The bed in the basement groaned under her weight. She shook out the dusty sheets and blankets and shivered. She had brought some of her own blanket, and she could already feel the cold seeping into her bones. She was exhausted and thankful that she had nothing to do but sleep. It had to be a few hours later when she was jolted from her doze by someone walking down the stairs. It's just me, honey darlacood. I brought you some dinner. You know you can't get better without eating. Naomi sat up, pressing against the headboard. The cook placed the tray in her lap. You didn't have to do this, she said, stomach growling at the smell of the soup. Don't act like that. You have to eat, Darla said, shivering. I'll see if I can find some more blankets. You'll never get better sleeping down here in this cold. Kate won't be too happy about that. Her cold hands were so shaky she couldn't get the soup to stay on the spoon. Let me worry about that, okay? I'll be down before bed to check on you. The punching bag swung viciously and Killian gave it one last strike before it hit the ground with a loud thud. He breathed heavily, chest heaving. He shook his head, pushing back the anger, and letting the adrenaline fade. He unwrapped his hands, blood soaking the fabric. I'm not so sure your mate would be happy you're destroying your hands, Mickey teased, tossing him a pack of bandage. Whatever, Killian muttered, hanging the bag back up. I know my dad's on your back, but he does it because he cares. That's how he knows how to show it. It's not that, he said, taking a seat. He's right. I need a mate. It's just... Mickey placed his hand on his shoulder. I get it. You've struggled to let someone in emotionally since we lost your parents. It's very intimidating to let someone in, someone that's permanent. And she's not a wolf. Killian shook his head. A Luna that's not a wolf. It's not uncommon. Most tend to choose wolves, but there's no rules, Killian. You know the pack will support you in your decision. Mates were chosen. There was no instant connection. No smell or magic to lead them to each other. Typically, it was dominant wolf who sought out the partner. Killian's dad told him to listen to his gut, that was the moon goddess guiding him to the right choice. And so far nothing seemed right. What if I make the wrong choice? The words were soft and hesitant. Mickey was the only person he could confide in. You won't. You'll know what to do. Chapter 3. I don't think this is a good idea. There's probably 2 girls in there who are 18 and nothing more. Besides, 18 is so young. Killian crossed his arms, glancing out the window. Would you relax? We're in the area, so we might as well, Mickey said, pulling into the long driveway. I know we've exhausted all of our options, he sighed. I'm tired of this shit. Let's go home. He was tired of girls parading in front of him like he was some prize to be awarded. That wasn't what it wanted. He wanted a partner, a best friend. Someone to love him even if he got angry. Mickey parked the car, glancing at the stern man next to him. Mickey, we have a long drive back. I don't want to waste my time anymore. I'm looking for my mate too, he added pitifully. Besides, I already told them we were coming. Killian rolled his eyes, knowing his friend was just putting on an act. He got out of the car. The monster of a house loomed like a blot of ink on an otherwise perfect sheet of paper. It was dark and looked like it was falling apart. His wolf stirred, which caught his attention. His wolf had retreated with Killian's intense emotions, and had rarely made an appearance except when he shifted. It was odd that he was making one now. The lady that answered the door reminded him of a snake. Innocent to look at, but ready to strike at a moment's notice. He hated when people put on a show just because of his title. Alpha and Beta of the Moon Valley Pack. We are honored that you decided to stop here. Please come in, she smiled, allowing them inside. For being so dingy, the place was spotless. Someone really took their time cleaning the place. I'm Kate, director of this group home. She held out a polished hand that Mickey shook. Killian wasn't interested in her pleasantries. Unfortunately, we only have a few girls at this time who are 18. We do have several 17-year. Absolutely not, Killian said, cutting her off. Do you make it a habit of exploiting children? The lady flushed and stammered. We're in a bit of a rush, Mickey added, glancing around uneasily. Right, she pursed her lips. They're waiting in the sitting room. Would you like any tea or coffee? No. The sitting room was small. There were 3 girls in the room. 2 of them were dolled up and chattering carelessly. The other was off on her own, and Killian's gaze immediately sought hers. His heart pounded in his chest. There was something about her, something that wasn't there when he had been looking all those times before. The house was in full chaos mode. Some high-up beta had called and informed Kate he would be visiting with his alpha. There were only a few that were of age, but Naomi had seen this before. Kate would try to get them to seek out someone younger. Naomi was still recovering. She felt weak, and was certain she would never feel warm again. Yet, Kate expected the whole house to be polished before they arrived. Some of the girls were giggling, throwing clothes around the otherwise clean room. I've heard the alpha is hot, one said. What if he's mean? I heard he tracked down the people who killed his parents and tore their heads from their bodies. That's just a rumor. Naomi was one of 3 to be shown. A few alphas had visited before, so she was quite used to the process. Not once had they actually chosen from the home. She didn't expect today to be any different. Help the younger girls eat lunch and then you can join the others in the sitting room, Kate said, heels clicking on the polished floor. The young schoolgirls were Naomi's favorite part of the house. For the most part they were sweet and happy to be around her, not jaded by the other role models. Miss Kate said we could play outside after we ate, one adorable girl said, her feet swinging as she took a bite of her sandwich. Can't you play with us, Naomi? Naomi could feel a smile pulling at her lips, a rare sight indeed. Not today. Maybe this weekend if I can get ahead on my work. They seemed happy with her answer. They stacked their dishes. You're going to trip if you go outside with your laces untied, she said, stopping the girl with swinging legs from getting up. She bent down, taking her foot and carefully tying them extra tight so she could run without worry. Are you going to marry a prince? Me. The girl giggled and nodded. I don't think I will marry a prince, Naomi whispered. You are the real princess. You are definitely going to find one day. She straightened. Go on and play before it gets dark. Naomi brought the dishes to Darla before heading towards the sitting room. She heard Kate in the foyer with 2 male voices. One of them rushed over her like a blanket and she frowned. Her heart picked up speed. This felt different. Why was she so nervous? She gathered her wits, taking a seat on a chair. She wiped her palms on her pants, waiting anxiously to see who the voice belonged to. Chapter 4. His eyes were brown. Chocolate, clouded swirls that bored right into her. His focus was immediate and so was hers. The man stepped towards Naomi, and it took everything in her power not to shrivel up in fear. Killian observed her skittish behavior, and noticed all eyes were on her. I need everyone to leave us, he said with no room for argument. The room emptied. Mickey was the last to leave. I'll just be by the door, Alpha, he whispered. Even with the room empty, he could see the fear on her features. Even sitting down he could tell she was small. He took a seat on the ottoman next to her chair. Not too close but not too far. I'm Killian, he offered hesitantly. She wasn't what he imaged he would pick as a mate, yet everything about her called out to him. Naomi, she offered. Her voice was angelic, soft and husky. Hearing the sound made it seem like he was living for the first time. How old are you, Naomi? She glanced down, her hands brushing nervously against her pants. 19, almost 20. He was surprised by this. She looked to be the youngest of the group he had just saw. She was frail, just skin and bones it seemed. She had deep bags under her eyes. He wondered how the girls were treated here. He wouldn't put anything past the director. I'm 25. I'm from the Moon Valley Pack. Do you know where that is? He was doing everything to keep his voice level and gentle. It seemed to help as her tense shoulders slowly eased down and her gorgeous eyes finally looked up. She shook her head no. It's quite a drive from here. It's getting late, so I can't stay here long. If you don't want to leave with me tonight, I understand, but I will be coming back tomorrow. Naomi soaked in the man beside her. Everything about him seemed dark. He wore dark clothes, had dark hair. He had a sleeve of tattoos run up his left arm, yet when he spoke to her, he seemed gentle. His presence made her feel warm and at ease. That made her nervous but not afraid, not like she normally was. You want me as your mate? She asked, confused. He shifted a bit, like saying the words out loud made him uncomfortable. I've been searching for a while. When I saw you, you called out to me. I've never felt anything like it before. I felt it too, Naomi admitted. Really? He was surprised by that. He figured it was his wolf or something. Naomi didn't have any ties to this place. She would miss Darla and some of the young ones, but she wouldn't miss the teasing, the work, the exhaustion. She was terrified to leave with a strange man, a wolf at that, but she somehow knew that she would be okay. I'd like to go with you tonight, she whispered. Killian couldn't prevent his grin. He felt excited for his new adventure, for getting to know the adorable girl next to him. Okay, how about we gather your stuff then? Killian was like a giant walking up the stairs to her shared bedroom. The ceilings were so low that he had to hunch his shoulders. He was displeased at what little Naomi seemed to own. He sat on the bed watching as she packed. There was very little clothing, a bear, and a small box that she stuffed at the bottom of her bag. I can't believe the alpha chose the shrimp, one girl whispered on the bed. She said it low in the other girl's ear, using her hand to block her mouth, but Killian could hear way better being a wolf. He observed his mate who seemed unfazed, and yet again he wondered what she had been through here. Do you think I can't hear what you are saying? He asked the girls, crossing his arms over his chest. You should know better than to disrespect a future Luna. You wouldn't want to know what we do as punishment for those who dare to do so in a pack. The room went silent and he stood, taking Naomi's bag. I'd like to say goodbye to someone first, she said softly, stopping him from walking out the door. He nodded, following her into a kitchen where a plump old lady was working at the stove. Naomi, the lady cried. I was worried that you would leave without saying goodbye. This was the first time Killian had felt welcomed in the whole house. The lady felt like a grandma and he could feel his own barriers lowering in her presence. You must be the alpha. I'm Darla, she smiled, holding out her hand. Killian, he said. I'm so happy that Naomi can leave. She works too hard for her age. She deserves this more than anybody. Work. Killian eyed the blushing girl. I'll miss you, she whispered. I'll miss you lots, honey. It won't be the same here without you. Killian watched as Darla hesitantly reached out. Naomi stiffened as she patted her cheek. A tear fell on her cheek and Killian's heart wrenched. You are more than welcome to come visit anytime, he offered. Such a sweetheart, she cooed, staring into his eyes without fear, something even wolves had trouble doing. You've also had so much pain. You will be a good match. Lots of healing to do. Darla moved, rifling through the cabinets. I've got snacks for the road. I know you have a long drive back. She filled containers full of cookies and pretzels and popcorn. Make sure she eats, will ya? Safe driving. Naomi gave her one last lingering look, feeling a heartbreak she hadn't felt in a long time. Darla was the only person to care about her. Killian placed a hand on her shoulder as they walked to the door, a motion that was supposed to be comforting, but Naomi jumped back so violently she fell onto her butt. Shit, I am sorry. Are you okay? I didn't mean to scare you. He held out his hand, but she ignored it. I'm okay, she said. Killian watched as her body seemed to flood with fear again, like she was reliving a certain moment. He had a lot of questions. Kate held open the door. Goodbye, Naomi, she said. Thank you for coming, Alpha. The door closed. Chapter 5. Naomi stared out the window as the world blurred by. It was rare that she rode in a car. Her life had been in the house, and everything felt new and scary. Killian sat beside of her. He watched her every move. The silence was deafening. Is there anything you want to know about me? He asked. She thought everything over. Did someone kill your parents? He gave a curt nod. She saw a fleeting glimpse of pain, of old wounds still yet to heal. Mine too, she added, going back to look at the window. She saw his surprised expression in the reflection. How long were you at the group home for? He asked curiously. I was 10. And then you decided to work there. Naomi really didn't want to speak anymore. She had felt like she had talked more than she had in her entire life. Killian recognized her change in emotion. He pulled off his jacket, draping it over her small body. She rested her head on the window and closed her eyes. He glanced at her long brown hair that complemented her stunning green eyes. She was beautiful. Killian took over driving while she slept. Something funky was going on there, Mickey commented, shoving a cookie in his mouth. Killian hummed in agreement. He was thinking the same thing. The other girls looked normal, pampered even. So why did Naomi look different? Why was she so fearful? She freaked out when I touched her, he said in a hushed whisper. There was a word at the forefront of both of their minds. Abuse. I can tell she is good match for you, the beta said. Look at how calm you are being over this. There was definitely a shift in energy. The anger was still there. It was red and hot and bubbly, but this wasn't about his parents, about having to take on the responsibility of a pack. No, this was for the treatment of the sweet girl sleeping contentedly behind him, who had been through something unspeakable. Naomi woke up feeling warm and well-rested. It was the best sleep she had ever gotten. Killian was driving. The sun was long gone and she couldn't see anything beyond the headlights. It was weird. She felt safe. It was a feeling she hadn't had in a very long time. After everything she had been through, she tended to be afraid of males of any kind, and living in a girl home most her life hadn't helped her. There was something about Killian that comforted her, even with how intimidating he looked. He looked like the kind that would hurt her, yet he spoke to her like she mattered. Hey, his husky voice said, his eyes catching hers in the rearview mirror. Not too much longer. Sleep okay? She nodded, knowing fully well he probably couldn't see her. All right. We'll get some food from the main house on the way in. Are you cool staying at my place? I mean, I could get a room for you at the main. No, please. Her response was immediate. She didn't want to be alone with other wolves she didn't know. She didn't want to be away from the safety of Killian. All right. She could feel his smile. She must have dozed off again, only waking when Killian was calling her gently. I got us some dinner. Mickey said good night. Ready to go in. She nodded, rubbing her eyes. His house was nice from the outside. She liked the large windows, something she missed at the other home. She couldn't see much of his land in the dark, but she couldn't deny the little bit of excitement she felt at her new adventure. Naomi stretched and trailed behind Killian into the home. He switched on some lights. Feel free to explore, or if you want to start eating while I grab the bags. I'm sorry it's so late. He was so sweet. She bit back a smile. Thank you for letting me stay with you. She knew he wanted to reach out, and a part of her wanted him to, but another part told it was too soon. She stepped back and he straightened. You can use the microwave to heat the food. I'll just be a second. It was bothering him to not be able to touch her. He wanted to hold her hand to push back her hair. He had to remind himself it had only been a few hours. Oddly, she was in the living room when he came back in. Her fingers ran along the spine of the books he had crammed into some built-in bookshelves. He dropped the bag as not to startle her. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with curiosity. I'm sorry, it's okay, he said, offering a little gentle smile. This is your home now. What's mine is yours. Do you like to read? She nodded. You have some of my favorites. He was pleased she was making the effort to talk to him, and that he was learning something new about her. He stepped closer. Yeah. Which ones? She pointed to a few. Her short height was prominent when she had to stand on the tips of her toes to reach some of them. You have a good taste, Killian praised, voice dropping to something soft. Something new just for her. You are more than welcome to read any of the books here. Anything you want, okay? She gave another nod. How about dinner? Then a tour. He didn't let her answer, realizing she was overwhelmed and wouldn't be able to. He thought she was cute when she was flustered. But there was still fear there and he couldn't wait until she realized that he wasn't a threat. Chapter 6. The bed was so fluffy. The blankets were so soft, and everything smelled like Killian. Naomi couldn't believe how different one night could change her life. Change her entire perspective. She felt different. The sun was just coming over the horizon, casting some light through the window in her bedroom. She took in the trees and the early morning fog. She wondered if Killian would mind if she went to the living room to read a book. She mulled it over a bit before deciding he wouldn't care too much. She took the soft blanket off of her bed, draping it over her shoulders like a cape. She wasn't expecting him to be awake. He was sitting on the couch, a laptop on his legs. "You're an early riser," he said, smiling slightly. He patted the space next to him. She picked a book off the shelf before sitting next to him. She draped the blanket over her lap, but there was still plenty left, so she offered the end to Killian. He chuckled, taking it from her and draping it over his own lap. It was the first time hearing the sound, and Naomi felt an immediate smile at her lips. She ducked her head to hide it, opening the book up. It was quite a bit of time later before he spoke again. "I've got to go to training in a bit, and then I will probably go to the office to work. I wish I could spend today with you, but I took a day yesterday and I really can't," he said sincerely. Naomi felt panic surge through her body. She didn't want to be away from him that long. She could feel the blood rush to her ears and she sucked in a deep, shaky breath. "Naomi," he called softly. "What's the matter?" "I won't know unless you tell me." He held out his open palm, and she hesitantly placed her own hand on top. Her mind eased almost immediately. She swallowed. "I don't want to be away from you." She peeked up at him through her lashes. "Of course you can come with me if you'd like," he offered. "There's just going to be others around, and I understand it's a lot to process right now." Killian watched her think it over. "You know I'd never let anything happen to you," he added. "I'll go," she decided. He slowly ran his thumb over the back of her hand before pulling away. "I'm glad you decided that. I would have missed hanging out with you." He watched her light up a bit. "How about breakfast?" Killian made sure she was bundled up as he sat her on the lone pair of bleachers that overlooked the sparring field. "You can yell for me or Mickey if you need something, or come down to us." "All right." She nodded. He draped the blanket over her lap. "I'm so proud of you," he said. And he meant it. He recognized that she was out of her element, but she was making the effort for him, and that meant the world. She warmed inside and out from his praise. Naomi watched Killian walk out on the field. He looked authoritative, capturing the attention of every single person. It was kind of attractive, and the new feeling was odd. She was nervous about what she was going to see. Everyone seemed really friendly. They didn't stare too long, some even waved and smiled at her. However, it was called the sparring field, and she hoped there wouldn't be too much violence. He commanded the field. Everyone was lined up perfectly, and he weaved in and out the people like it was a dance. Naomi was intrigued. It wasn't what she was expecting. They ran a lot of laps really fast, and they paired up for hand-to-hand command, but it was mostly getting the strokes perfected versus hitting to be hitting. "Why do you train?" Naomi inquired curiously as she walked with Killian to the main house. "We don't expect a fight from another pack. We want to be prepared, of course, but mostly wolves have a lot of energy that needs to be released. If you noticed, a lot of the people today were really young. They're just getting used to that intense amount of energy, and it can be hard for them to focus on other tasks like school." She nodded, trailing behind him as he entered the house. It was huge, probably double the size of the group home. There were some ladies hanging out in the main room off to the right. Killian said the kids hang out in the theater after school, and he also showed her the massive kitchen. He was guiding her up to the office when a group of rowdy boys came tearing through the hallway. It sounded like a herd of elephants, and scared Naomi so bad that she pressed herself against Killian's back, her little hands fisting his shirt. Killian growled, "You boys know better to run in here." "Sorry, Alpha," one said, bowing his head. "We heard the cooks made cupcakes." Naomi relaxed and stepped back, unable to control the small giggle that escaped her lips. She caught Killian's gaze and he smiled before turning back to the group. "Next time, don't run through here like a stampede. You're going to hurt someone." They apologized and he released them, before turning to face Naomi. He had hardly seen her smile, and the little laugh she made was like music to his ears. He was determined to hear it again. "You okay?" he asked her. She nodded, and once more he had to suppress the desire to reach out to her. He wanted to run his hand along her face, her hair, hold her hand. Anything. "Come on. I'll show you my office." Chapter 7. Killian told her to sit wherever she'd like, so Naomi dragged her chair so it was as close to his as possible. He chuckled but said nothing. He started his work and she watched him curiously for a bit before she turned to the book she brought. She was doing her best to hold back from asking questions. She didn't want to annoy him, but Killian knew exactly what she needed. "You can ask me anything," he said softly, brown eyes finding hers. She hesitated. He placed the back of his hand flat on the desk, and she slowly put hers on top. She had always hated physical touch, but touching him cleared her head. It made her feel calm, normal even. He didn't make any move to adjust his hand. He didn't even wiggle his fingers. He was very patient, and that meant a lot to her. "How do you know what to do?" she asked finally. Killian hummed. "I guess I saw my father do it. I worked under him when he was still alive." He glanced at her, seeing her still watching him. She was a curious little thing. "Go on. Ask another." "I won't bite." She shifted in her seat, pulling the sleeves of her hoodie over her hands. "Do you like doing it?" "This part not so much. I like interacting with the pack and being able to see them grow. Usually I don't have too much to do in here, but I have been doing double until Mickey gets inducted next week. My father's beta and I haven't been getting along." "Oh," she mumbled. "Is there something I can do to help?" He grinned. "You're a sweetheart, you know that." She blushed, and Killian thought she was gorgeous. "I would love your help. You have a lot to learn though, so how about when I get Mickey in here next week I show you the ropes too?" She nodded, seeming pleased with herself. She returned to her book, and all was quiet. Killian. The man at the door was older, with kind features and tired wrinkles. He looked sad. Killian stood, walking to the front of the desk to block Naomi from sight. "Beta," he greeted formally. "I wanted to meet your mate and to take over work for you. You should be spending time with her, not in here." Killian was a bit surprised, but he realized for the first time that he was no longer dealing with a surge of negative emotions like he usually was. He felt clear-headed. He soaked in the man who was like a father to him. Yes, Joe had been hard on him, but he was the only one left to be in that role. "This is Naomi," he said, moving to reveal the timid girl behind him. "I'm Joe," he said with a smile. Killian was happy Joe stayed by the door. He could feel Naomi's nerves at the new male presence, and he didn't need her being any more uncomfortable. "If you'll give us a minute to clear out of here, then the office is yours," Killian said. Joe nodded. "I'll be down the hall." He turned to his mate. "Want to get out of here?" She nodded, gathering her book and following him out the door. Killian stopped the man from walking past them. He held out his hand. "Thanks, Joe." Joe gave him a firm shake and a nod. It was after dinner. Killian and Naomi were sitting on the couch together back home. She had her book and he was watching the television. "Are you settling okay?" he asked genuinely. "Do you need anything?" She shifted in her seat. He realized that was her nervous habit when she was holding something back. He hid his grin. "She was so cute." "Naomi," he murmured, encouraging her to open up. "I didn't work for the group home." "Not really," she whispered, blue eyes peeking up at him. "I didn't have anywhere to go, and no money, and Kate said she'd let me stay if I worked." His confusion morphed into anger, but he held it back. "So you weren't paid?" She shook her head. "No." "What kind of work did you have to do?" She scooted closer like she needed the comfort. Her small body fit against his perfectly. "Everything," she said it so softly with so much pain that his heart lurched. She explained that she cleaned every room, did all the laundry, made all the beds, helped with meals and bedtime. "And if you didn't do everything you were asked?" She swallowed. "Kate said that she was treating me better than the real world." He swallowed his anger. "Naomi, you realize that is—" "Don't say the word, please." She squeezed her eyes shut, facing a lifetime of pain of her own. She leaned into him, the first tear falling onto her cheek. He draped his arm over the back of the couch, wanting desperately to wrap his arm around her shaking frame. "I didn't have any other choice," she whispered, tears falling faster. I know. It's okay now," he soothed. She reached for his hand that was hovering over her shoulder, pulling it down so he had it wrapped around her. He didn't want to feel giddy over this, but he did. It was so fast, yet the trust was strong. He wrapped his arms snugger, and she tucked into his chest. She had never felt so safe and cared for before. He only did what she asked him to, accepted her flaws and fears. He was a true gift. She needed that cry. It had been so long where she had felt anything but numbness or fear. His thumb made circles on her arm, and for the first time in her entire life, someone's touch comforted her. "It's going to be all right," he whispered, and she truly believed him. She was so content. Killian slowly moved his hand from her arm to her hair. Doing okay? He mumbled. She nodded. She liked the feeling of him playing with her hair. It was so comforting that her eyes slowly closed. Chapter 8. Naomi went to training with Killian the next morning. She felt rejuvenated, lighter. There were still things he didn't know, but there were things she didn't know about him either. Alpha, will Luna be training with us? One young girl asked loudly. We need more girls. She was surprised by this. It would be kind of fun, but she definitely couldn't keep up with them. She looked up, meeting Killian's gaze even from far away. He gave her a subtle wink and she felt her cheeks heat. Not today, maybe one day. What about capture the flag today? Someone else asked. Capture the flag. She didn't even know what that was. We'll see. Are we going to stand here and talk all day or actually get some work done? I saw that look, Killian said, walking over to her on the bleachers. He used his shirt to wipe the sweat off his forehead, and Naomi caught a glimpse of his very toned abdomen. She didn't want to give away that she was looking, but her face grew hot immediately. What look? She met his smiling eyes. Do you want to train? She shrugged. I couldn't keep up. Maybe not now. You don't eat nearly enough for you to exercise that intense. We could work together and then move you into the group. She smiled up at him and he smiled back. Come on, I am hungry. Killian offered her his hand, and surprisingly she accepted. She laced their fingers together. Can we cook? She asked, swinging their hands a bit. I don't really know how, he admitted. I don't either. He gave her a skeptical look that made her giggle. He grinned. She seemed happier today, and he loved her little smiles. I guess we could try, he said. He would do anything her heart desired. He was head over heels for her. Naomi was actually a really good cook. Killian pulled up a recipe on the computer, and then they had to track down the ingredients from the pack house since there wasn't much at home, but she was a natural at it. I would eat this every day, he told her, taking another bite of the breakfast she whipped up. She blushed extra pretty. We can find a few other recipes and go to the store so we don't have to borrow ingredients, he said, watching her pick at her food. Do you not like it? I'm full, she said, setting her fork down. Come on now, you hardly ate. She shrugged. I can't help it. He reached for her hand. You don't have to explain. We're going to work through it. Just takes time. She gave a weak smile before standing and stacking their dishes. He helped her clean up before heading to shower. When he was finished, she was fast asleep on the couch. She looked like an angel. He was hoping to sit next to her and do some work on his laptop, but realized it was nowhere to be found. He huffed. He hated leaving her, especially knowing she hated being alone, but he didn't have it in him to wake her. He scribbled her a note and headed to the main house. Is that a smile I've been seeing on your face? Mickey teased from the office doorway, startling Killian. Don't be a dick, he muttered, tucking his computer and a wad of paperwork under his arm. Seriously, Killian, it's a good thing. I'm really happy for you and for Naomi. I didn't expect it to feel like this, he admitted. Have you been looking? Mickey frowned, the look oddly uncharacteristic. I thought I would get through the beta ceremony first. One thing at a time, right? Killian studied him for a moment. Okay, I'm here if you need to talk. Mickey followed him down the stairs and Killian was just about to leave through the door when he heard someone talking in the hallway. I didn't expect Alpha to choose someone so weak. It was all he needed to hear. The surge of anger that coursed through him was fiery and prominent. He shoved the poor, unsuspecting boy into the wall. How dare you talk about your Luna that way? I'm sorry, she's stronger than you will ever be. Don't think for a second that just because I have a mate I will go soft on you, boy, he growled. The boy flailed under his grip, and Killian slowly set him on his feet. You don't want to know what I'll do if I hear that talk again about anybody, do you understand? I don't tolerate bullies. The group scattered as he backed off. He needed Naomi and some air. He still felt so angry. He thought about a few days before when those girls at the group home were whispering about his mate. He didn't want her getting the same treatment here. He feared it would regress her too far back for him to be able to fix. She was awake when he came in. She was reading and she startled when he entered the room. She must have seen the look on his face. Killian, she whispered, standing up. It was the first time she had called his name, and some of his anger cooled immediately at her sweet voice. Did something happen? No, sweetheart, he said. SB pouted. like she knew he was lying but didn't have the courage to call him out on it. He chuckled. She was too adorable for words. He held out his arms, giving her the choice. She walked into his embrace, snuggling into his chest. She fit perfectly. Just some rowdy boys. I probably got too angry, he said. Are you still angry? She asked curiously, green eyes peeking up at him. Not at all. He bent his head ever so slightly, his lips brushing faintly over her forehead. Chapter 9. The beta ceremony is a formal event, Killian said at dinner one evening. You'll need something fancy. Naomi racked her head. She didn't really have anything. Let's go into town and pick out a few things. Not even for the ceremony, just in general. I'm sure it's been a while since you've gotten clothes. His question was gentle, not accusing. She glanced down at her worn jeans that were someone else's hand-me-downs. She wasn't opposed to going shopping. She just wouldn't have any idea where to start, and she worried it would be awkward with Killian. But he was so sincere. He would take care of her. Okay, she agreed. Killian and Naomi entered a formal dress shop. The kind old lady seemed very helpful, but she was wary and stuck close to her mate. I can't be the only one looking. I'm not sure exactly what you like, Killian said as he flipped through a rack. He motioned for her to start on the opposing end. It was kind of fun. She liked picturing herself going to different events in the different gowns. Nothing was quite right though. They were all glitzy and low-cut. She needed something modest. She pulled a few to try and turned to Killian, who had also chosen a few. He took a seat in a chair as she went to the dressing room. Do you want to see them? She wondered out loud. Only if you want to show me. She nodded, wishing she had another set of hands to help her into the dresses. The process was going to take forever. Everything fit too loosely on her torso. There wasn't any place to tighten the fabric with a zipper. They were also too long on her short body. She frowned, exiting the dressing room, dragging the long baggy dress out. It isn't working. Killian stood. Don't get frustrated, he said softly. It's okay. We'll figure one out. We can get the length tailored if you find one that fits on top. She turned to face the floor-length mirror, feeling her whole body tense with the self-loathing that was pushing forward. This one isn't even zipped all the way, love, he said, stepping behind her. He reached but hesitated. Can I get it? She felt her skin darken at his gentle kindness, and she nodded, feeling the heat of his hands on her back. It also has a button here, he muttered, pulling the fabric gently, mindful of her hair. There. Neither one of them were expecting it to look the way it did when it fit. The deep green fabric had long chiffon bubble sleeves, and the length was supposed to be midi, but was quite long on her. The neck was up a bit higher, which she appreciated. She felt like a princess. You look stunning, Killian told her sincerely. I like this one, she said, turning to face him. She watched his eyes move the length of her body. I think it's an excellent choice. I actually have something green to match you. She smiled, feeling giddy and beautiful. Thanks for taking me out today, Naomi told Killian on the way home. He smiled, holding out his hand. She placed hers on top, gripping his fingers. I'm here to take care of you. Whatever you need. He said so sincerely that her heart clenched. No one has ever cared like he has. Never given her the doting attention he does so effortlessly. She had a terrifying realization that she was falling in love with him. He saved her, wrapped her up in his protective arms to shield her from her past and her fears. He was so good to her. She didn't know how she got so lucky. You okay? Killian asked, bringing their hands to his mouth. His pressed his lips to the back of her hand. She stared out the window. Her life would have been headed an entirely different direction if he hadn't decided to go to that group home, or if she ultimately decided to leave when she turned 18. I'm just really lucky, she whispered, to have you. I appreciate everything you do for me, for being so patient. I'm sure I am not what you had in mind as a mate. The car pulled in front of their house. Killian turned to face her. You've exceeded my expectations, Naomi, he murmured, cupping her cheek. I've had a really rough time. Dealing with the loss of my parents, but also navigating being alpha. It's a lot. I don't think you realize how much I need you. You keep me grounded. His deep eyes bored into hers. I think I'm the lucky one. He gave her a sweet smile. Naomi felt a cloud of emotions rain over her. He was so incredibly sweet. He brushed away a fallen tear. He was so close, his warm touch comforting. She wanted him to kiss her, but she knew he was doing his best to go slow for her sake. And she appreciated that, but she didn't know how to tell him that she wanted a kiss. He exited the car, rounding the front to her door. She took a deep breath, gathering her confidence. He helped her out of the car, and she gripped the front of his shirt, stopping him from moving. "What is it?" he asked curiously. He was too tall and she faltered. Even on the tips of her toes she couldn't reach. "Come down here," she said meekly, a pout forming. He chuckled, bending his frame so they were eye level. She cupped his cheeks, loving the feeling of his scruff, before hesitantly pecking his lips. She pulled away before he could react. Killian was a bit stunned, not expecting her to make the first move. He smiled. "You're so adorable." "I'm sorry," they both said at the same time. He reached for her, pulling her to his chest. "Nothing to be sorry about. If you wanted a kiss, you just had to ask." His tone was teasing as he chuckled again. Feeling beyond happy, she looked up at him and he down at her. Her cheeks were rosy, but she still gave him a sweet, shy smile. He tucked a piece of hair behind her ear, like he had been wanting to do ever since he met her, and dipped his head. He had never felt anything like he did when their lips met. She was so warm as her fists clenched his t-shirt. His hand moved to the back of her head, the other around her back. She made a cute noise when he pulled away, and his smile was immediate, uncontrollable. He was blissed out. The video is about to end, but the story of Naomi and Killian has just begun. Subscribe to continue following their journey. How will Killian and Naomi's relationship evolve after revealing their dark pasts to each other? Can their bond strengthen amidst shared sorrow? Want to know how Killian and Naomi overcome their challenges together? Subscribe to our channel to catch every thrilling moment. Chapter 10. Killian stirred the soup on the stove. He was getting better at cooking too. He wanted to be able to take care of Naomi, but it was a lot harder for him to learn because he tended to be impatient. Naomi was reading, sitting on a stool against the island. He turned to her. "When I met you, you said you were almost 20. He saw her cheeks darken and he held back a smile. "When's your birthday?" She continued to stare at her book. "Naomi," he called, but she didn't budge. "I'll tell you mine. It's next month, November 15th. She finally looked up. "Tomorrow," she whispered. He held back from saying anything stupid to stress her out. Tomorrow. Why wouldn't she tell him? She probably had a good reason, but it better not be because she was too shy to say something. "I don't like celebrating," she said quietly, closing her book. He frowned, turning his back to serve their food. He slid her a bowl. "I understand. You could have told me." "I'm sorry," she whispered, reaching for him. He took a seat beside her, taking her hand. "Don't be." He couldn't help but feel a little offended. He didn't have any right to be. Who knows what her past birthdays have been like? But he wanted to use it as an opportunity to prove he cared about her. That he was there, and that he listened. "Don't be upset, Kill, please," she said, tugging on his fingers. He was surprised to hear the nickname. It sounded so sweet coming from her lips. "I'm not upset, princess," he said, turning to face her. He laced their fingers. She shifted in her seat and he waited patiently for her to speak. He could tell she was carrying something heavy today, something she was normally good at hiding. "I want to tell you something," she whispered. Tears already gathering in her eyes. Her face was haunted. She was reliving the past, caught in her demons. He nodded. They abandoned their meal to move to the couch. He stretched out and Naomi sat between his legs, laying against his chest. He took her favorite blanket and draped it over her shoulders. She shuddered and gave a pitiful whimper that broke his heart. He wished he could take away her pain and suffering. He wished he could have taken her place. He was lucky to have two parents who loved and adored him. "My uncle lived with us for a while. I was too little to remember why." A soft sob left her lips. "He killed them. I was in the house, I heard everything." Her cries deepened and he rubbed her back, feeling his heart beat violently in his chest. "He took on the role of my parent, but it was so wrong. I knew what he did. We never left the house. He started touching me." A pained cry left her lips, the tears soaking his shirt. He felt his own emotions rise at her distress. She hiccuped, and on my birthday, he told me I was old enough, so he laid me on the bed and he— Stop, Killian croaked, unable to hear anymore. His own tears fell, mixing with hers. He squeezed her tight. She reached up even through her own tears to wipe his away. There was some obvious relief to let go of something so heavy. Her damp lips caught his cheek and she gave a final shudder as her tears dried out. Is he dead? Killian asked, his sadness morphing into a hot anger. He would kill him himself, rip him apart piece by piece. She shrugged. I was taken away. She rubbed his chest, feeling him tense. I'm sorry I brought up tomorrow, he said sincerely, feeling guilty that he caused all of these emotions. I was tired of carrying that alone, she admitted. I'm ready to move on with you. He smiled weakly. You're not alone. I'm here for you, whatever you need. She sighed gratefully, settling on his chest. He pulled the blanket back over her shoulders. How about you and I make a cake together tomorrow? Killian asked, playing with her hair. Baby steps. She nodded, taking his hand and admiring the colorful ink. I like them, she said, tracing the tribal print up his arms. Yeah. He was happy they were able to move away from the heavy topic. It goes all the way to my chest. He used his other hand to show her where it ended over his shirt, just under his left pec. I want one, she said, her little hand still tracing the ink absent-mindedly. Where? Of what? You asked too soon, she pouted. Just something small, somewhere hidden. You don't want a sleeve. He teased. I have another I'd like to get so we could get an appointment. She nodded, thinking over all of her options. It was a big decision, but it felt good to finally be in control, finally be the one deciding on her life. Come on, baby, we should probably finish dinner. You wanted to start training with me next week, remember? She smiled a little, using her palm to wipe her cheeks. How could she forget? She was really excited. They ate and cleaned up together. They were both emotionally exhausted and ready for bed. Can I sleep with you tonight? Naomi asked, looking wide-eyed and adorable. Of course you can, he said without hesitation. She still got ready for bed in her room, but went on down the hall to Killian's. I don't think I've seen your room before, she said. She didn't know what she expected, but it wasn't what she thought. She expected something dark, maybe messy. But this was plain and everything was so neat she wasn't sure anybody even stayed in there. The walls were gray. The bed frame and nightstands were wood, and the comforter was navy. Other than that, the walls were bare and the room was empty. She turned to Killian, who was watching her intensely. I knew this was the room I'd share with my mate, so I hated staying in here. You didn't want a mate? She wondered out loud. She wasn't offended by it. She didn't doubt Killian's feelings for her one bit. Not that. He moved closer, his arms crossed, and he looked vulnerable, young. I have been so damn lonely, Naomi. My parents were my best friends. I became alpha, got this house. I wanted to stay in the main house, but some of the pack officials thought it was inappropriate. Most wolves have their mates when they become alpha. That's a lot of change, she whispered. Plus me. You were a good change. He moved closer, his hands reaching for her shoulders. You feel like home. She smiled, biting her lip to hold in the giddiness that filled her. His lips quirked up. He nudged his nose with hers, their mouths brushing just the slightest before he pulled back. We could decorate, she said, reaching for him. Her hands went to his waist and not his shirt like normal. I wouldn't mind that, he said, seeing just how bare it was compared to the rest of the house. Come on. They moved to the bed. Killian took the left and she the right. His bed felt even better than her own, but that was probably because he was in it. You can come closer, he chuckled, extending his arm. She shifted towards him, curling into his side, and extending her own arm over his stomach. He was so warm and smelled so good. He was her home. Chapter 11. You are a goddess, Killian said, stepping up behind Naomi where she was adjusting her dress in the mirror. Her cheeks reddened as they always did, and he smirked, bending his head to press his lips to her neck. She gave a little shiver, smiling cutely at him through the reflection before she turned around. Thank you, she said. I don't really know what to do with my hair. I wish I could braid my own. Her hair was long and thick, and always looked like a mess when she attempted to braid it. She had to pull it to the side to reach it. She had tried so many times. She braided some of the younger girl's hair, but never her own. Killian said. You can. She was shocked. My mom taught me. She said it would be a good skill if I ever had a daughter. I have always been hot-headed. I think she was trying to teach me patience. I can't do anything fancy. She turned to face the mirror once more, handing him her brush. He was so gentle with his movement. It was so endearing. This is perfect. Thanks, Kill, she said, standing on her tiptoes to give him a kiss. You better get dressed. He hummed against her lips, moving his to wrap around her waist, pulling her to his front, deepening it. Heat flooded his body. He released her, licking his lips as he moved to the bathroom to get changed. His suit was the same color as Naomi's dress. He chose to wear a black fitted t-shirt underneath the jacket. Naomi had to make sure her jaw didn't drop when Killian emerged. She had never seen him dress up this formally before. He was so handsome. He flashed a lopsided grin. He liked that she was blatantly checking him out. You like? He asked, doing a silly little twirl. He was hoping to make her laugh, and the giggle she released was so worth it. You'll have to be up front on the platform with me, he said on their walk to the sparring field where the beta ceremony was being held. He heard her suck in a shaky breath, but she nodded. You're going to do great, he said. I'm right by your side. She did her best not to look at the crowd of people who watched as they moved closer. He took her hand, guiding her up the few steps to stand next to Mickey and Joe. He shook their hands. Good morning, Killian greeted, his stern voice breaking the chatter of the crowd. I'm thankful that you all decided to come witness the day that Mickey Hardman becomes Moon Valley's beta, my beta. I couldn't think of someone more fitting to help me lead. It was quite a simple ceremony. Joe said a few words about his departure, and then Killian formally recognized Mickey as his second in command. It wasn't until their walk home that chaos happened. Fuck, Killian said, looking up at the pack house. All of the windows on the ground level were smashed. How the hell did this happen? Mickey, who was walking with them, stepped closer. The broken glass crunched under his shoes. Most people were at the induction. Naomi noticed a boy in all black trying to sneak around the side of the house. Kill, she said, tugging on his jacket to get his attention. You, Killian boomed, startling the boy who didn't even notice them. He looked about ready to run, but Killian reached him in about 3 pissed strides. You're the one who was talking shit about your Luna the other day. So, the boy asked, his attitude prominent. You're McAllister's boy, he noted. John McAllister was a single father, but had a really rough time with cancer. It wasn't common for wolves to be ill, which made it even more difficult to deal with. Do you want to tell me why the hell you smashed the windows? Mickey joined them, dropping a baseball bat at their feet. Look what I found. Killian's anger wasn't what he expected it to be. He saw a lot of himself in the young teen who was acting out for attention. He thought a lot about what his father would do in the situation. You'll be running laps before training and after. All of these windows will have to be replaced, and to pay for it you'll be doing dishes every night. The boy's tough facade faltered. My dad's treatment isn't working, he whispered. There's a trial medication, but we can't afford it. The pack sets aside funds for each family for those sort of things, Killian said, cooling his tone. We've used it all, he murmured, and he swore he could see tears in the boy's eyes. You just needed to talk to us. I'm sure we could figure something out. Like a fundraiser, Naomi said, speaking out for the first time. We could do that. Killian was surprised to hear his shy girl speak up, but so damn proud. It took everything not to smile. It's a good idea. We'll talk to your dad soon, but you need to get inside and get all of that glass cleaned up, and you need to help cover the holes for the night. Yes, Alpha, he said, I'm sorry. He turned towards the house before he turned back to Naomi. Thank you, Luna. You did good today, Killian said as they finally got home. I didn't mean to step on your toes, she murmured. Not at all. He wrapped her tiny frame into his arms. You are just as important as me or Mickey to this pack. I know it's very overwhelming, and I am so proud of you. She smiled, and he leaned down to give her a gentle kiss. You're going to plan the fundraiser. What? She tried to pull away, but he kept a steady grip. I have no doubt you can do it, sweetheart. His hands went to her cheeks, his thumb skimming soothingly. Obviously I will help, but I think you are going to do really great at this. Chapter 12. McAllister needs about 2,000 for the new meds, Killian said, not even sounding out of breath from his slow jog next to her. She swallowed. Okay. That seems doable. Her voice was breathy from running. It felt good at first, but now she was starting to get tired. Time to walk, he said, dropping his speed. Are you doing okay? She nodded. They had been training together for a few days. He had really only been teaching her how to run by jogging intervals to build her endurance since she had never done anything like it before. The first day seemed way too easy. Today was the first where she struggled to keep up. It is very doable, he said, continuing the prior conversation. There's around 75 pack members. If we could think of something where they could all contribute, the money wouldn't be an issue. What about like a fall festival? With food and games. We could charge an entrance fee. He picked up into a jog. That's a good one. An entrance fee wouldn't make enough, I don't think. There would have to be something else. They were quiet until she stopped, unable to go anymore. She hunched over, sucking in air. I don't think I can train with the pack, Kill, she gasped. He took her hand, helping her straighten. Don't be so hard on yourself, baby. You've only done this a few times. You're doing so good. She took a minute, but ultimately Killian made her finish the last interval. It was funny how physical exercise could impact her mentally. She felt stronger, like she could accomplish anything. Or maybe that was just the sweet man standing by her side. I'd like to visit McAllister with Jacob one day, Naomi said quietly, taking a drink. Killian was pleasantly surprised. His mate was making great efforts, and he was blessed to have someone so strong be his forever. Sure. We can go, he said, taking her hand. He pressed his lips to the back of it. I love you. Are you ready for my presentation, Alpha? Naomi teased, standing from her seat. Killian was working in the office and she was making a fundraiser plan for the McAllisters. She had never called him Alpha before, and he felt a flood of heat consume his body. Her confidence was so damn hot. He grinned, I'm ready. We will hold a fall fest trot, which is a 5K run. There will be a $15 entrance fee, so let's say only 25 members show up. That's just under $400. Then for the actual festival, there will be a $10 entrance fee. And then maybe a pie sale when people come in. She slid her notebook over so he could see her scribbled, yet dainty notes. I don't think we will get to 2,000, plus the pack would have to spend some money, so I understand, she mumbled. Naomi, baby, it's a really good idea. Come here. She walked into his embrace, and he pulled her onto his lap. I haven't been great at keeping the morale up. It's hard when you don't feel good, he admitted. I don't care to put away some money for this because I know the pack will love it. You're an excellent Luna. She pushed her lips onto his, before placing her head on his shoulder. She felt her heart thud blissfully in her chest. They're lucky to have you as an alpha, she murmured, her hand rubbing circles on his chest. He had wanted someone to say that for so long. He was only trying to be the best he could be. And now he had the sweetest, bravest girl by his side. The moon goddess did not steer him wrong. I'm falling in love with you, he whispered. I've already fell, she said back. You've changed my life, Kill. You've been so patient and caring. I'm stronger because of you. Neither one of them said the three words, but they were felt as they sat together, soaking in each other's warmth. He kissed her cheek. You're going to be a busy lady. You need to figure out the trot route, and make a list of what you'll want for the fest so I can pull some funds and set up some meetings. Naomi was excited to be able to do something, be a part of something. She couldn't wait. Alpha Luna, it's a pleasure. Thank for visiting, John McAllister said, attempting to use the button to rise his bed. You don't need to sit up, Killian said, stopping him. We came with good news, and then we will leave you to rest. Jacob, his son, sat by his side. Luna put together a whole festival just for you, Dad. Can you believe it? Naomi blushed, staying slightly hidden behind Killian's tall frame. McAllister was speechless. We want you to be able to get the help you need. All of the money made will go towards your treatment, he said. That is so thoughtful. Thank you both so much for helping us, even after the trouble Jacob put you through. Jacob and I worked it out. He's a good kid, just needs to find something purposeful to do with his time. Killian glanced at Kid, who looked embarrassed. You are a blessing, Alpha, and you, Luna. I see a bright future for our pack. You parents would be so proud of your work, of your mate. You've done good, he praised, before giving a few rough coughs. Naomi took Killian's hand. They wished the family a good night before leaving the man to rest. Chapter 13. Naomi hated leaving Killian's side. It made her really nervous to be apart from him. She was helping set up the festival that was happening tomorrow. Killian had pretty much handed her the reins and it had been a lot of fun, but now there were other people involved and it was getting overwhelming. Killian cupped her cheeks. You can do this, sweetheart. I just have to meet with Mickey. It'll take 20 minutes max. You're so busy you won't even know I am gone. Yes, I will, she pouted. He chuckled, kissing her softly before his features got serious. If you start to get anxious, just remember you are the Luna, you're in charge and you don't take shit from anybody. I'll be right back, promise. She nodded and he gave her one final kiss. Naomi shifted uncomfortably. She felt like she was in a room full of people naked. But if her Killian believed in her, then she would try. She continued setting out some tables. The cloths would go on first thing in the morning. Once that was done, she decided to check on the kitchen to see if they needed help with the pies. She stood anxiously by the door, gathering her courage to speak up. The room was hustling. Can I help? She asked meekly, certain they wouldn't hear her. Luna! Someone exclaimed. Come in here. We could use another set of hands. They each introduced themselves before she was handed a peeler and a basket of apples. You and Alpha make a great team, the lady next to her said. She was chopping the peeled apples. Not only is this good for the McAllister family, we are all excited to be able to do something as a pack. Naomi gave an uncertain smile. Some of us still eat dinner together, but they used to do special pack dinners once a month. I know Alpha struggled to fulfill some of those traditions. They held so many memories for him. She peeled for nearly half an hour before she had to move on to her next task. I know you'll be busy tomorrow, but we have nearly 100 pies to carry out to the field if you can lend us a hand. Naomi agreed, waving goodbye to the sweet lady. She headed back outside. Killian was in the field discussing something with a tall man that held a clipboard. She hesitated, but he called her over. This is Ron. He's a pack member that owns an ice cream shop in town. He's been working on a truck, so we agreed that tomorrow could be his test run. Naomi gave a polite smile, stepping closer to Kill. I was telling Alpha that I will be willing to donate a certain amount of my profit tomorrow. John is a good friend of mine. Thanks again. They shook hands. Killian snaked his hand around her waist, turning her towards him. That was way longer than 20 minutes, she mumbled. He grinned. All right, I'm guilty. It went over. You doing okay? She nodded. I got the tables ready and helped with the pies in the kitchen. That's fantastic, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you for stepping out of your comfort zone. He kissed her gently. We just need to inventory for all the games and stuff. She took in a shaky breath, anticipating all of the people tomorrow, and set up bright and early. I'm running the 5K, he said. You are? Yeah, I'm going to win, he grinned. She giggled. I don't think that would be fair, Kill. Besides, you have to work. He huffed playfully, pressing her lips to her cheek. You've done a great job, princess. Just relax and enjoy it, Killian said low in her ear. She was pressed securely to her side. It's a lot of people, she mumbled. I know, he reassured. But I'm not going to leave your side today. He kissed her forehead. The festival kicked off with the race. They had a lot of participants and a lot of people cheering them on. Then the festivities started. There was pie ice cream games with prizes. There were people everywhere. Naomi and Killian walked through, greeting everyone they saw. It had been so long since there had been an event like this. It was a great way to bring old friends together. Alpha, will you play with me? One sweet little boy asked, his arms full of bean bags for cornhole. I don't know, I only play games I can win. I saw you play against your brother. I don't think I can beat that, he teased, taking a set of the bags. He was like a magnet as more kids came their way. Naomi felt her heart flutter. Seeing her mate surrounded by kids, and he was so doting and playful. She had never seen anything like it. Killian looked up, feeling her stare. He smiled, tossing her a wink. What was that look for? He asked, handing her a bowl of ice cream. She stared at it a bit confused. What? Have you never had it? A long time ago. Why is it green? It's mint chocolate chip. That's my favorite flavor. Do you want something else? She giggled and shook her head. That look was because I have never seen you act like that. You would make a great dad. She said it without thought and they both paused. He never assumed he would have a mate, let alone a child. Yet the more he stared at the beautiful girl in front of him, the more he realized that adding to their little family was what he wanted. Eventually. Do you want kids? He took a spoonful of their shared ice cream. I've never given it any thought, she whispered. Me either, he admitted. I do want some eventually, but I am happy focusing on ourselves right now. She agreed, a small smile crinkling her features. How many do you want? He smiled too. He felt beyond happy in this moment with her. He gave a hum like he had to think on it, but the answer came immediately. 2 boys, 1 girl. She laughed. For someone who hasn't thought about it, that was fast. He took her hand, tangling their fingers together. He let the conversation die out as he looked around, surrounded by friends and family. Everything was right where it was supposed to be. Chapter 14. Killian dropped a stack of cash on the table Naomi was resting on. She startled, looking up from her book. $2,500, he said. Are you serious? She asked, glancing at the money skeptically. I am. I'm going to put some back into the pack for what we spent, but I will give the rest to McAllister. Wow, she said, standing up and walking into Killian's arms. He rubbed her back. I've taken the day, so let's do something, he said. Like what? She placed her head on his chest. He moved his hand to her hair, playing with the long strands. I've got an appointment at the tattoo parlor in town. It won't take long, and after maybe lunch. Can we go to that bookstore too? She asked. Absolutely, he said, pressing his lips to her forehead. Do you think they could get me in for an appointment? He glanced down at her, his blue eyes shining. I'm sorry, I didn't think you were super serious about getting one. You can have my appointment. She smiled, reaching up to cup his cheek. You're sweet, Kill. I'm not taking yours. I can at least make one for myself when I go. He leaned down, kissing her fiercely, stunning her that she stumbled back. She might have fallen if he didn't have a grip on her. Killian thought she was so beautiful when she smiled. She pushed back into the kiss, doing her best to convey all of the love she felt for her man. Naomi got a small rose on her hip. The lady was very kind and patient. Killian was in the seat over getting something on his chest. He wouldn't tell her what. She was trying not to stare, but she had never seen him without a shirt. He was so hot, which was a new word in her vocabulary. On the car ride in, the pair decided to get matching tattoos. It was a spur of the moment. Hers said you see all my light on her upper thigh, high enough to be easily covered, but not too high. Killian was getting one in the same spot, but his said and you love all my dark. Why can't I know what you got? She asked Killian as they left the shop. She tugged on his fingers and he chuckled. Well, now it's got a bandage on it, so you'll have to wait. Did you like my flower? I saw it when you picked it out, but I haven't seen it yet, he said, glancing down at her. She hummed, and there was something mischievous about her body language. She was too adorable. He loved how much she had opened up to him. Guess I will show it to you when you show me yours. He grinned, bringing their clasped hands to his mouth. She slid into a booth and he slid next to her. He could feel she was nervous to eat in a restaurant, and he moved his hand to her back comfortingly. What are you going to get, baby? He asked gently. I think I want to try chicken and waffles. I didn't know those two things could go together. That's a good pick. That's what I was thinking too. Will you order for me, Kill, please? She peeked up at him, and he gave her a reassuring smile, catching her lips with his own. Of course I will. She enjoyed their day together. She enjoyed Killian, period. She got really lucky to have such a handsome, brave, sweet man by her side. I think this is my new favorite food. We'll have to make it at home, she said. He paused, his fork lowering back to his plate. He felt a rise of emotions. She had never used that word before. Home. Naomi blushed, finally murmuring, you are my home. And you are mine. His brown eyes met hers, shining so lovely in the sun. She was his everything. For the first time since his parents were killed, he didn't feel the gaping hole in his chest. He felt complete. He felt loved. Wow, Naomi breathed, watching Killian's majestic wolf stare at her. He had never shifted in front of her before, so when she asked, he seemed excited. She moved closer, holding out her hand so the tips of her fingers ran through his silky brown fur. Like a puppy, she giggled. He was way bigger than her, but so soft and fluffy. The wolf gave an annoyed snort. She continued to pet him until he laid down, resting his head on his paws. Wolves were such majestic creatures, she realized. She sat down, resting against his bulky frame, feeling content and warm. Chapter 15. Naomi was getting faster, stronger. She decided training with the pack was not what she wanted after all. She liked the time she spent with Killian, but she was strong enough to play capture the flag. Killian wasn't in the house when she got up, which was odd. He never went anywhere without her, and she had a sinking feeling that he might not be okay. She gathered her courage. She could go to the main house alone and just check the office. Maybe he needed to get an early start. Maybe she could be helpful and take him some coffee. It was a lovely morning. The days were getting colder, and there was a light frost that sparkled under the orange glow of the morning sun. She went up the stairs. It was still pretty early, so no one was around. The office door was wide open, which meant Killian was probably not in there. He hated working with it open. Mickey was sitting at the desk, typing away on the computer. He looked up at her and gave a small smile. "Hey Luna. How are you?" "Hi," she whispered by the door, shifting uncomfortably. "You're looking for Killian. Today is not a good day for him. I'll show you where he is at," he said, standing up. Not a good day. But if he was having a bad day, why didn't he come to her? Then again, she did the same thing on her birthday. She followed Mickey all the way down the stairs and then one more flight to a basement converted into a gym. The punching bag was swinging so violently she knew it was going to fall. Killian didn't stop or look up. "Killian," Mickey called, trying to get his attention. "What?" he snapped, giving one final hit that made the bag fall with a thud. She could see the fabric was starting to split after being hit so many times. His hands were bleeding. The wrappings were a dark red color that made her stomach twist. Killian finally looked up, and he looked shocked to see her. "Shit, Naomi. What are you doing down here? You should be sleeping." He glanced at Mickey. His features were tired and he had a deep frown. "Why the hell would you bring her down here?" "She came upstairs looking for you," he defended. Naomi finally walked closer to him, reaching for his hands. He pulled back until the tips of his fingers were just barely resting on her palms. "Kill," she murmured. "You're hurting yourself." "What's the matter?" His chest heaved. He wanted to snap. He wanted to tell her to go back to the house and leave him be. But he couldn't do that, not to his girl, no matter how upset he was. He watched Mickey retreat up the stairs, before his eyes found hers as they always did. He sucked in a deep breath, stepping away from her, but she followed. He sat on the bench, and she moved to a set of cabinets on the wall. She shuffled through cleaning supplies before finally finding a first aid kit. She sat next to him, reaching for his hand. He resisted, but she persisted. She unwrapped his left hand, wiping away the dried blood before cleaning the wound with a ton of alcohol. "Fuck, baby," he hissed in pain, pulling his hand back and shaking it out. "That's what you get for being grumpy." "Bring it back over here," she demanded cutely. He chuckled despite himself. "This is going to scar and you're going to have ugly hands," she said. "But you'll love me no matter the scars." He whispered, turning her cheek so she faced him. "I love you even when you are a sweaty, bloody mess," she affirmed, cheeks pink, brightened by her small smile. He bent his head so his lips caught hers. He pulled his hand free from her small one so he could cup her cheeks. The kiss was rough. He was trying to tell her how much he was hurting, how much he loved her. All of the conflicting emotions wrapped into one. She struggled to find what to with her hands, before finally reaching around his back, trying to get impossibly closer to him. He seemed to get the message. He pulled her onto his lap, and her hands went to his neck. He licked her lips teasingly. She squirmed like the action disgusted her, which he thought was really funny. He pulled back with a laugh and Naomi pouted. "Gross," she frowned. "What? You think my kisses are gross?" He teased again, loving the look of her swollen lips and flushed cheeks. He could forget about all of his problems when he was with her. Killian gave her another peck before his features hardened again. Naomi waited patiently, knowing he would tell her what was going on when he was ready. He sighed, beginning to feel the throbbing, hot pain of his hands and the sweat clinging to his shirt. "Let's get out of here." The walk home was quiet. He went up to shower and she made some breakfast. She figured he was hungry. Who knows how long he was down there for. When he came downstairs, he was dressed in comfy clothes, which meant he was not going out for the rest of the day. He had bandaged his hands, and his dark hair glimmered with water droplets he must have missed. He stepped up behind her. "Thanks for breakfast." I'm sorry about this morning, sweetheart, he said sincerely. He kissed her forehead. It's okay, Kill, she answered sweetly. I'm here if you need to talk. She figured today was something significant with his parents, and she respected that he wasn't ready to talk. It was hard for her to open up to. She just hoped he knew she was there to listen. Chapter 16. Killian was laid out on the couch. Naomi was on top of him, her eyes closed, but he knew she wasn't sleeping, not yet at least. He played with her strands of soft, long hair. He wondered what she would think of him when he told her. He needed to tell someone. Mickey knew, but that was about it. Naomi shifted, placing her palm on chest. You're tensing up. You okay? She asked, her eyes finally opening up. I am not who you think I am, he admitted quietly. She moved again so she could look at him, and then waited patiently for him to speak. There used to be a pack just north of the city, which is about an hour from here. My dad had to go up there for some business and I was going with him. My mom wanted to pick up something for Christmas at one of the box stores up there. He exhaled and she rubbed his chest soothingly. They ambushed us while we were shopping. We weren't even enemies with them. He shook his head, clearing the dark memories. I don't know why they spared me. I didn't know how to live without them. A tear fell onto his cheek, and Naomi's heart clenched. She reached up to brush it away. I killed them, he said. Just the two that attacked us. I was so angry. My mom would be so disappointed in me. He thought of his sweet mom. She was always by his side. She always supported him no matter what. And his dad. He was a hard-ass, stern most of the time, but loved Killian with all of his heart. He didn't know what he had until it was ripped away from him. I know that changes the way you look at me, she stopped him. Doesn't. I stabbed my uncle. He was stunned. His mouth probably gaped a bit. He held back the inappropriate laughter and she settled back down. You what? After that first night I was in so much pain. I know he was going to do it again and I wasn't sure I would make it through that. The memories didn't feel painful anymore. Not after what Killian had shared. So I snuck a knife from a kitchen, and when he came into my room I was ready for him. Killian couldn't imagine Naomi with a knife. Did you kill him? No, she said after some hesitation. She had thought about it. What if he had come after her? Or chosen not to give her to the group home? It doesn't change the way I look at you, she told him. Whoever that was that did that isn't the man I love. I'm proud of you, Naomi, he said, going back to playing with her hair. I can't imagine how hard that must have been for you. I think I would have liked your parents, she murmured. He sighed. I have no doubt my mom would want to be your best friend. It was quiet. She scooted up so she could rest her head in his neck, and he pulled the blanket up higher. We should honor them somehow, she told him, her hands going to his jaw where it rested. He had never given it any thought, and that made him feel guilty. He should have done something sooner, not let years drag on. She placed her lips on his neck, and he focused on the feel of his sweet girl laying on him. You're right. You'll have to help me think of something. There was relief to both of them, to finally be rid of all secrets and all pain. It was finally time to move on. Chapter 17. Killian invited the whole pack to play a huge game of Capture the Flag, with a potluck dinner at the end. That's how he was going to honor his parents. His dad loved the game and they both loved bringing the pack together. Those who didn't want to play were scattered around in chairs, getting the food ready and just hanging out. Mickey and Killian were captains. Mickey got to choose first because Killian had picked first last time. I picked Naomi, Mickey said. What? Killian asked, stunned. You can't, Naomi laughed softly, muffling it with her hand. Why not? The beta challenged. Are you okay with this? He's just messing around. You can stick with me. You've never played before and... It's okay, she whispered, a cute grin lightening her features. We're going to win. I'm serious. You don't have to. Are you two done? Mickey interrupted. Killian rolled his eyes, watching Naomi move to his best friend's side, instead of his. Envy wounded his gut, but Mickey was smart. He knew his mate was his weakness, and he knew he was going to use that against him. He would be strong like Naomi, who looked quite tense standing without him. He did his best to send her a reassuring look. They continued to pick until each team had about 20 people. Their flags were in place and they were ready to get started. Killian stopped Mickey before he could follow his team into the woods. I swear to God if anything happens to her. Mickey grinned. Relax and enjoy getting your ass beat for once. Naomi wandered the path on her team's territory. Her job was simple: stop Killian. Mickey told her he played the same way every game. He had most of his team guard while he retrieved the other flag. He was the fastest and strongest after all. Come on now, princess. It's not too late to end this. She spun around, finding Kill watching her. She felt her heart flutter with excitement. We're going to win, she insisted, although her resolve was weakening as he stepped closer. His arms crossed across his chest. Are you sure about that? She eyed the flowing creek next to him. She wasn't sure she was going to be able to stop him any other way. Kill, she murmured, her tone warm and sweet. You're so handsome, you know that. She stepped closer and he took a step back just like she knew he would. She licked her lips, peeking up at him. His eyes were blown wide. I think I want. She reached like she was going to grip his shirt, but instead gave his chest a shove. Poor, unsuspecting Killian stumbled back into the creek, losing his balance and falling onto his butt into the freezing water. He could not believe she had just teased him like that. She laughed. Are you okay? I'm sorry. He gripped her leg, pulling her feet in so she could feel what she had done to him. She squealed. No, it's cold. It's too cold. Yeah, it's cold, you little minx. I can't believe you pushed me in here. He huffed playfully, standing up. He reached for her, pulling her to his chest. Stop it. Let me go. You're all wet, she protested, unable to stop the joyful laughter. She squirmed but was unable to break from his grasp. A howl broke them from their fun and Killian cursed. That was Mickey. You guys won. Ha, she stuck out her tongue, looking quite adorable. He couldn't resist, bending his head and capturing it between his teeth playfully. She jerked away, her cheeks turning red. That is so gross. That's what you get. I can't believe this, he sighed dramatically, helping her out of the water. We need to get you some dry shoes, baby. He held out his hand and she clasped hers with his. She could hear the cheers from the field where all the food was. She could also smell the smoke of the bonfire and she wiggled her frozen toes in anticipation. Today was fun. She tugged on Killian's fingers, like she always does when she wants his attention. He glanced down at her. I am sorry, and I do think you're handsome. I wasn't just saying that, she mumbled, feeling her cheeks flame again. He stopped, cupping her cheeks so she met his eyes. I promise I am not actually upset. It's just a game. I'm proud of you for playing against me your first time. His lips met hers gently, and her hands reached for his shirt, clutching the fabric between her fists. They continued to walk. I think you're beautiful, Naomi, so brave and full of life. You are my everything. I am blessed to have you by my side, he added. I wish my parents could have met you. They would be so proud of you, Kill. He gave a soft smile, reaching his arm around her back. He was doing his best to ignore the cold clothes freezing his skin. He still couldn't believe she had tricked him today. He thought. He shook his head. He didn't know that she would ever be ready for anything more than a few kisses, but she had surprised him a lot lately. The only thing that mattered was that she was happy and healthy, and the rest would fall into place. It already was. This girl was his whole life. He was beyond happy they could grow together. Bonus chapter tattoos. Author note: bonus chapter are scenes I had already written, but were excluded from the chapters due to length, incompletes, etc. Naomi waited impatiently for Killian to remove the bandage, and she shifted closer to get a peek, but he was being sneaky. Kill, she whined, flopping on the bed dramatically. Why can't I know? He chuckled and finally moved closer. She swallowed thickly as his muscular, bare chest came into view. She sat back up, finally seeing the two wolves howling at a crescent moon on the right side of his chest. There's me and there's you. Underneath there was some text that said my everything. Wow, she breathed, hesitantly reaching out to run her fingers over it. He stiffened and she pulled away. Sorry. He chuckled, picking up her hand and pressing his lips to the back of it. It's all right, sweetheart. I was just a little unprepared. She blushed. What did that mean? I believe you told me that once I show you mine you can show me yours. She pulled the end of her shirt to just below her left set of ribs, revealing the dainty swirly rose. Very cute, he said, sitting next to her. He reached to touch it, but looked up to make sure she was okay with it. She smiled at him and he brushed his fingertips over the ink. Him touching her like that felt very intimate, and the panic she thought she would feel was replaced with a deep love for the man in front of her. She leaned up, pressing her lips to his fiercely, cupping his cheeks. He groaned, caught off guard by her gesture. He wrapped his arms around her back, deepening the kiss. Bonus chapter chicken. The oil sizzled and Naomi jumped back from the pan. You okay? Killian asked where he was battering the chicken. I didn't know it would do that. Darla never fried stuff like this. She curiously moved closer. Not too close in case it pops. Pops? I think that's normal. He questioned, shrugging. How's the waffles going? He had surprised her with a waffle iron. Knowing they couldn't try to make chicken and waffles without it. The maker had a light that turned green when they were done. Naomi moved back to her own station, tossing a blueberry in her mouth. Not done yet. Smells so good in here. Killian smiled, flipping the chicken with a fork. I hope it tastes good. You're a good cook, kill better than me. She offered him a blueberry, and he opened his mouth like a bird. She stood on the tips of her toes, but he still had to scrunch down for her to reach. She giggled happily. I doubt that. I'm impatient, he chuckled. Did your parents cook? My mom was great. She tried to teach me, but I didn't like spending that much time indoors. I wish I would have. I can't remember if my parents did. I can't remember much of them, she said. Did your mom write or keep any of her recipes? Killian hummed, a vivid memory of his mom sitting at the kitchen table with recipe cards surrounding her. But where did those all go? I don't know. I think she did, but I don't know where they could be. It was quiet after that. He plated the chicken and got out some dishes. The first bite Naomi took was like a party in her mouth, and she wiggled excitedly in her seat. This is better than the restaurant. Killian couldn't help but watch her. His heart fluttered. She was so lovely. He loved seeing her happy. She paused her food dance, finding his eyes. What? He smiled, I love you. Her cheeks reddened and her smile widened. I love you, Kill. He pressed his lips to her forehead. Bonus chapter time skip 2 years later. Naomi dropped the test onto the counter in shock. The little white tube clanked with the others at the bottom of her sink. No. There was no way this was happening. She and Killian had only recently started having sex, and they were careful. A surge of panic hit her hard. What if he didn't want kids right now? They had never really talked about it. Her stomach twisted for the second time that morning, and she covered her mouth. It was no use, and she rushed to the toilet to release the contents of her otherwise empty stomach. She had been so sick and exhausted the last week or so. One of the pack ladies she was helping in the kitchen quietly and discreetly mentioned the word pregnancy, and 4 tests later that would seem to be the case. She slid from her hunched position to the cold tile floor, clutching her stomach. She could feel her heart pound violently against her chest, and she put her head on her knees. She was going to ruin everything. The last 2 years with Killian had been incredible, but now everything was scary again. Baby. Killian knocked on the door, startling her half to death. He wasn't supposed to be home. I brought home lunch. Are you feeling okay? She dried her lone tears. Yeah. She cleared her throat, trying to sound normal. Yeah, I'm okay. I'll be out in a second. She stuffed the tests in a bag and put them under the sink. She didn't know how she was going to tell him. She expected him to be downstairs, but he was still outside the door. He pulled her into his arms. What's going on? Killian whispered, using one hand to cradle the back of her head and the other rubbed her back. A sob left Naomi's lips that she tried to muffle with his shirt. My poor baby. What's the matter? He held her tightly until she calmed down enough to speak. She opened her lips but the words wouldn't come out. I'm scared, she cried. He kissed the corner of her lips. Don't be. I'm right here. She reached for his hand, placing his large palm against her stomach. Tears blurred her version. Killian smiled. What are you telling me? Are you? She nodded, and he brushed her tears away. That is fantastic news, he murmured, feeling extremely excited but trying to be sensitive to his little mate. It is. She sniffled. He brushed his lips with hers. The best news I've ever gotten. Imagine a little boy running around here that looked like you, he said, moving his hand back to her stomach. Her cheeks heated and she gave a soft laugh, finally relaxing a bit. She imagined a little boy or a little girl that looked like Killian, and couldn't deny the flutters of excitement. a family of her own. I know it's scary, Naomi, he said, kissing her again. But I am so damn excited to have a baby with you. We had never discussed it before, and I was worried. I know it wasn't planned, but everything happens for a reason. I love you. Love you more, she said, snuggling into his chest. 9 months later, Naomi gives birth to a little boy they name Quinn. If you've enjoyed our content and want more, don't forget to subscribe to our channel.